Hey, welcome to the show. We have again Jeremy and Jerry, our friends in Toronto with Guildhall Wealth Management. And they have some pretty timely um, events to share with us that center around a trial. We have a trial going on in the US, always a trial, whether it's Biden's kids or the GOP's candidate. We're going to look forward to more trials, but I want to say hi to Jerry and Jeremy and get both into there we go. We got everyone in the screen. And let's start off talking about Jerry. Introduce the topic because I had one available, but I like yours better. So go for it. What is our topic?
Debanking, it's a theme that has grown and it has been spawned, I think, over the course of years. A lot of weaponization of the banking system that has been done, not just to countries using sanctions, but sanctions have been placed on people, on everyday people. And up here in Canada, we're following quite closely here at Guildhall, something that has really impacted many of our clients. We specialize in gold and silver specifically. And your president, who Herbert Hoover, said best, we have gold because we cannot trust the governments. And trust just really was flushed down the toilet. So now, in response to the closing of in the response to of this protest that happened in Ottawa a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, really was it what it was. It was an anti-mandate demonstration that happened in Ottawa, the capital of Canada. And the organizers, specifically Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, are now on trial for charges of mischief, obstructing justice, counseling others to commit mischief. And as a result of that protest, the banks went to move and to freeze accounts linked to these protests. If you were sending money, if you're donating to the cause, they were just simply locking your bank accounts. But it was something that Chrystia Freeland came out with Trudeau. The Emergency Powers Act gave authorities to freeze bank accounts, to cut funding, mortgages, even insurance policies. If you're one of these vehicles that were there, they can cut your insurance policies. But it was a signal to the individual here in Canada that our money can be controlled very simply because we are on a digital SWIFT system. And with that system, they can turn our money against us. They can weaponize our money against us. They can freeze our bank accounts. So what we have seen and what that unleashed and really accelerated this trend of debanking and unbanking and debanking altogether has become two themes that we here at Guildhall were helping people with. So it's a very interesting time, exciting time, because all roads ultimately lead to gold and silver. Jeremy, your comments on what we've seen over the past 2 years?
I think that that was the peak of this government pushing what it could push, right? During that whole time, there was a concerted effort you could tell, like, there was a concerted effort amongst all governments in the media. It was the same message across the board, across every politician, every bobbling head online. That right there was the peak of them trying to control it. And in doing so, right in that moment, I think it woke up many, many Canadians to have them understand that no, the government doesn't control you. And if they want to pull these sort of harder fascist lines, right? Inflation, soft fascism, right? Mandates are soft fascism. But once you start actually moving towards a social credit system, you've moved into full out socialism, and you've moved towards fascism. And I think that was their biggest mistake in pushing too far, because they pushed just a little too far. And they did it. Some people say they did all of those things just because they were embarrassed. Honestly, it could be as that simple, that they're just so narcissistic that they did it. But you know what? People woke up because of it. We got really busy because of it. People said, you know what? I'm pulling out of the bank. Whether it was fear is this precursor to waking up, and that ignited a lot of fear in people of what the government could accomplish. I don't know if they realized at the same time that they were taking the power back in their hands.
Yeah.
Which is what they did.
And we followed this story real closely on Wall Street Silver. It was, like you said, you were real busy, and so was the engagement on our page, because in a way, it was the first test case where we were seeing in the Western Hemisphere governments sort of in a standoff against, aren't they sort of like folk heroes in Canada? The people, I mean, truckers, these are like farmers, people that are ordinary working class people that bring food to our tables. And why would the government pick a fight with them? So what are your feelings about these popular people that are still having, what sort of prison time are we looking at? Or are these considered felonies? Are they misdemeanors? There's a media blackout on this here south of your border.
I don't know. The proceedings are continuing. We're following updates from Rebel News Daily. Well, I am. And so far, a lot of the cases of mischief, they're not really making a good case in prosecution. Defense is doing a good job on what I'm hearing and what I'm reading. I don't know, specifically, we're busy here helping people,
Yeah.
unbank. Really, this can continue. We saw this in Cyprus. It was, that article right there, the debankings will continue until sovereignty improve. A decade ago, the Obama administration imposed Operation Choke Point, pressuring banks to cease relationship with businesses perceived to be conservative. So this has been going on, and they're just showing they've shown their hands, and they're not going after this or that. They're coming after the money, and I think that's where you start hitting home. And it's a theme of, am I waiting to get debanked, or shall I unbank first? And I think a lot of people are making the preemptive strike. And instead of getting debanked and getting whiplashed first and having to pivot and figure things out, they rather take control, like Jeremy said, first. And let's remove this from the SWIFT system first. Let's undigitize your wealth with something physical, like gold and silver. These are monetary, tangible, hard assets without counterparty risks, with their name on it. And that's what people want, their independence.
So Jeremy, Jerry picked up on something important. He said not only were their bank accounts frozen, and then I believe the people who even donated, there was some penalty for them. Then that money disappeared too from GoFundMe. And then lastly, the insurance policy. So the overreach is just egregious and heinous. I just wouldn't think that the federal government would have the ability to flip a switch and go across all those pretty, from insurance to banking to ATM machines. That is quite, it appears that they had been planning for such an event, maybe to be able to do it, to execute it so quickly. What do you think, Jeremy?
I think it was full out panic on their part. And again, I think that was the peak control on their part as well, of peak trying to censor people. And look, as soon as you have to censor people, as soon as you're funding the CBC, right, the broadcasting network, to put out your own propaganda, you've already lost. I mean, you might be able to fake your own polls, but you've already lost the war. And now it's just a question of people waking up to what's happening and being able to be in a position where they know what their choices are and they can make proper choices. So people aren't blindly following, okay, there's probably some still blindly following what the CBC says, but I would suggest, you can look at their numbers and see that their viewership is way, way down. Mm-hmm. People have moved on to alternative media and people are waking up. I remember at the time, John, Jerry might remember this as well, that a week before that all happened, there was a video put out by like the banking association. And it was like the head of the banking association. And he was pitching digital banking, saying, we're going to make it easy for you. You'll have one wallet. You'll never have to worry about losing your driver's license. The script, right?
Right.
And that was dead in the water, within a week, because of what the government did, and their ability to cut off people. And again, I think they pushed too hard, and now people are fully awake as to what happened, as to what's happening. Debanking is happening though on a different front now. It's not the government front trying to censor you. It's now banks saying, we don't want to renew your mortgage. Yes, it was okay for us to predator lend 5 years ago, but now we need good lending practices again. And unfortunately, you don't fall into that category. So for that reason, that's the underlying reason, but the between the line reason, we're no longer going to give you a mortgage. You're going to have to find that elsewhere. That's another front in the debanking war. But I would premise that debanking is second to the fact that, mortgages aside, you can't get inflationary beating numbers at the bank. Why would you keep cash in the bank when inflation's above 10%? It's no different than when it was at 0% and you had to go out and chase yield. But now, where are you going to chase yield? You're going to go into overvalued stocks while rates are rising, and those stocks can't. What is the Dow going to double from here? Is it going to go to 64,000 points on what economic activity, right? So you have to chase yield now, but where are you going to chase it? What's going to beat inflation? What's going to get you more than 10%? Treasuries, okay, great. You'll get 5%. Is that beating inflation? It's safe, but is it beating inflation? I don't know. It's an option. You know, sometimes losing a little is okay, right? It's better than zero, but it is a guaranteed loss in many respects, right? Now, I think they have a purpose. I think that there's a purpose to it. There can definitely be purpose to it. Maybe you need the liquidity, for instance. There's a good reason. But I do think that given the inflationary pressures today, why would you keep the funds in the bank? And then you have what their lending practices or their debanking practices, then you have even more reason to unsubscribe from the banks as well. So I think that there's multiple reasons here to be thinking outside the box of maintaining cash in your bank accounts.
So what you described, I heard it clear as day, is there's no safe place to go with the exception of gold and silver. You're saying bonds. Well, we know bonds are the triple threat for, we won't get into those. We can do that on another show. But chasing yield is endless chase. The other asset classes, as we spoke of last week, are in a bubble. And now we're looking at, it appears then the only tool left is, we'll have in some future slides here, is that they're wrecking things on purpose. I mean, that's the only conclusion I can draw. Let's look at how else they're weaponizing banking. I mean, earlier there was a slide here showing that we see this where, and China sort of engineered this playbook where almost anything you do is traceable, or it can be seized or expired. So it looks like it's going to be sort of, when you want to control the population, you can track their movements. And I have to admit, it is convenient. Like yesterday, I was in a battle with Wells Fargo. All of a sudden, there's a lot of wonky things going on with online banking. And this whole creepy is I don't know if you guys had this, but you go, my voice is my passport, please verify me. Or it's almost like you're, scanning your iris. You may think, okay, this is convenient. Now I can unlock my car. But with that convenience, there's the downside of surveillance. That's what I mean by weaponizing it for conformity. Don't you think that's what happened with this very trial you're talking about in terms of conformity? What were they protesting? Mask mandates, right?
Yep, mask mandates, even the no choice to the vaccines, not giving people the choice to take them or not, mandating that, and the consequences of not losing jobs, losing your livelihood. There was a lot at stake, and Canadians and even farmers in Netherlands, got into the very trucks It's the same weaponization happening there. It's a total usurping of your rights, of your livelihoods. It was too much of a loss, too much of a risk. And if there was a hill to die upon, that was one that many have stood up to fight and are still standing up today to fight, because we are helping that in that cause, in figuring out a way of, how do I get out of the banking system? How do I position myself away from eroding the financial assets denominated in worthless currencies? There is one way, and that is converting out of worthless paper fiat currencies, their central bank Fed notes, and convert into physical bullion, gold and silver bars held entirely outside of the banking system, whether it be an RSP. If you're watching and you're a Canadian watching, put it in your RSP outside of the banking system. If you're an American and hold IRAs, hold your gold and silver inside of a vault away from the banking system. So these are one ways that Canadians have done. And it's a double threat if you think about it, because that really woke people up as far as what's going on at the bank, what type of banking system we have, this fractional reserve banking system. Because 2 days later, Chrystia Freeland and the Canadian government had to relent and they reversed course, but it was too late. You already showed your hands. But it did another thing. It caused, and I'm pretty certain that the SilverSqueeze was definitely helped with the amount of Canadians that were coming on board and taking the physical silver out of the market. And they were they were hand in hand. And I've always said, and we've repeated this before at Guildhall, silver is that Achilles heel to the corrupt financial system. And if you want to bring back on an honest monetary system, this is the best way to do it. And I think we're going to see another squeeze, a draining of the mints are happening. It's a very exciting time to see all of this negativity. It's definitely being overwhelmed, but there is a strong foundation of things to come that are very positive.
How does I heard you talk about the IRA, and then we'll get into some other slides, but that is something that I'm unfamiliar with. And I'm never too old to learn. So tell me how that works. And
yeah. So
as far as Guildhall,
yeah,
specifically related to your business model.
So we've partnered. We specialize in the physical. So we are the wholesalers. We provide the gold and the silver, and we've partnered with a few American self-directed IRA companies. We have great relationship with them so far, just because we found a lot of Americans have moved to Canada and have these IRAs. So there is a market there. You've moved up here, but you have your funds in the US.
Okay.
Now that you live in Canada, let's do something. Let's roll over. Let's move your assets, but the assets will be held either in a vault in the US or in a vault in Canada. So you have the option to choose which jurisdiction you like. And this jurisdiction is very close by to us. We can go to the vault, do audits, physically see your gold and silver, because there is a motto: if you cannot hold it, you don't own it, and which is the truth. The fact that you can go visit these bars is proof in the pudding that these bars are yours, because honest truth, you're not visiting my gold and silver at the vault, they're yours, right? So it's a fun, it's enjoyable work, and it's honest work. And we love what we're doing here, and we're growing, and we're in this fight of together in Canada and the US. We're on board with getting that demand up for silver all the way.
Jeremy, are you going to improve on that silver? I would say
well,
a little bit of gold in there. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, yeah, I like gold a lot. I think that gold is a great wealth preserver. When you look at its performance, it's been very steady. In Canadian dollars, for example, it's had 2 down years in the last 15 years. It's had a little bit more down years in US dollars, but that's my true belief is that that's because they want to paint the charts. But its performance over time has still done its job, right? Completely, of protecting against inflation and protecting the purchasing power of your dollar. It's done very, very well. Gold is still, and also the cost of gold, right? It's got a lower premium, so there's a lower barrier to entry. And I think that makes it a really good place to be if you're protecting wealth, larger wealth. If someone came to us and said, I just sold a property, what should I do? So you should be buying mostly gold, right? Because you don't have as much of a barrier to entry to get into, and it's going to be protective, and it doesn't have as much volatility. That said, when you look at the global debts, you look at all of the unfunded liabilities, gold is still very much undervalued. And when gold is undervalued, silver's even more undervalued. And so we all know that silver is, the 80 to 1 range ratio of silver to gold. We know that silver's incredibly undervalued, and it does come unhinged. It came unhinged in 1980. It came unhinged in 2011, a few times in between. It will come unhinged again, only this time we're starting out at $25. We're not starting off at $4. And so the gains this time around on silver are obviously going to be much, much higher. And I think things have come to a head, and everything's bigger. The debts are bigger. The issues are bigger. The markets have more to fall. It's just going to be wildly exciting to watch when silver does take off. So it's nice to have a bit of both in the portfolio. And I think the IRAs, what we do with that is it allows people to own the physical directly. It does have to remain stored outside. It does have to be stored for regulatory purposes, but they're stored at vaults outside the banking system. So we don't have to worry about what happens to the banks. Who cares? They could collapse. They might not collapse. They could have banking holidays. No bank. It doesn't matter. The physical gold, physical silver is there. It's going to always maintain its wealth. It's going to always maintain its purchasing power. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. And 5 years, 10 years down the road, you're going to be thinking about how many ounces do I have, not what it cost me. I remember buying gold at $450 an ounce. That was my first purchase. I couldn't tell you anything in between.
Yeah, that's true.
I know I bought at every single peak along the way. Okay. But a peak at $800 doesn't matter anymore. And the peak at $950 when it dropped down to $875, who cares? It doesn't matter anymore. Right. And silver is stair step too. Anybody who bought silver between 16 and 1875 over that period between 2017 to 2022, 2021, or even 2020, I guess, they've stair-stepped higher. The price is now in the mid-20s, and it can go up, it can go down, and you're still looking at your portfolio going, it's saying to yourself, it's worth more.
That's right. And you can go to goldprice.org or any site and just go zoom back 20 years for gold and silver. And between the two, your average return is well over 400%. So you just can't beat that given real estate, certainly against the S&P 500 or any other asset class. And we've got more slides. This one kind of caught me just to surprise me a little bit, to think of how much of the debt, of the $32 trillion debt, will actually mature in the next year. And one thing we're seeing again is this denial of the recession. What did you say a couple of weeks ago? That the recession is transitory, I believe I remember you saying, Jeremy.
Yeah, that's right.
So
when I say that, that's funny.
Yeah, you did say that. I stole it from you.
Okay.
But here we have, the gray line indicating sort of a plot of bankruptcies. And what we're hearing in the US is everything is fine. But one of my first indicators is back in peak holiday season for retail has always been between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that's when Amazon and FedEx started laying off masses of people. And we're seeing record bankruptcies. So you would think if this is an indicator that, and massive layoffs, that we're in a recession, then you would expect the price of oil to go down in a recession. But here we're seeing that the price of oil we're at $90 a barrel now. So there you go. And, we have more self-inflicted wounds, like US picking this war against Russia. The Saudis are cutting production.
Russia, yeah.
Yep. And what is the U.S. response has just been to drain the SPR, and BRICS now controls 80% of the world's oil market. So I only see oil going up higher, and diesel in the U.S. has gone up 40% in the past 3 months. So let's get ready for a new wave of inflation. I mean, everything I own is brought in by a truck, since I'm not Amish. That's the slide on, there it is. She's a Bloomberg reporter, and I usually don't listen to Bloomberg, but I did fact check this, and that's a pretty big move in diesel in a very short time.
Yeah, not only that, but you know, governments, at least in Canada, government they tax energy. So when energy's up 30% or 40%, they're getting a tax revenue increase on that, right? And you know, 10%, let's just say 10% on 10% is a lot less than 10% on 40. So they get tax increases and on that, and then they're raising taxes on top of it. You know, there's clearly a war against the middle classes. They are coming after the middle classes in a big way. They're coming at them with income tax, with everything you spend after you pay your income tax. And then they tax fuel, they're taxing everything. There's a tax. I mean, these are the type of things that caused the French Revolution, right?
Right.
You could breathe and there was a tax for that. So, you know, people have to wake up to it. And the first thing you have to do is to figure out how you're going to protect against it and get it back. How do you get it back? So for me, okay, in Canada, we call it the RSPs. When you're deferring your income, I assume it's the same with the IRAs. When you're deferring the income, the first thing is why should the government get it? If they've provided this loophole for you to defer your income, then you should do everything you can to max it out. And even if that, in my personal opinion, I'm not a financial advisor, but I would borrow to do that, because the long-term gains of you keeping your money in your hands, okay,
Right,
is huge. You can't, you know, we all played in a yard as a kid and made a snowman. You made that big boulder, right?
right.
If you don't start with that little packing of snow, you can't build the boulder. And if every time you build a little bit of snow, you give it to someone else, you're never going to get the boulder. You're never going to get there. You have to start. You have to be able to keep what you own. And in I know from the RSP perspective, it's very simple. If you can defer the income and turn it into gold, which has kept up its value in the long term, then what you have to do is, the first goal is beat inflation. Well, we're going to do that with gold. I have every confidence in the world that we're going to beat inflation with gold. And then you just have to beat whatever the penalties are to remove it, or if you wait till you're retired, the income tax that they charge you when you withdraw it.
Right.
Again, can gold not go up 100% in the next 10 years? Where do you guys think the dollar's going to be in 10 years?
Exactly.
Forget thinking about that it's going to disappear. Let's say it does not disappear. It's certainly going to be worth less than it is today. Certainly.
I think we have a chart for that coming up here. This is just a no-brainer. If looking at the Dow dipping and then returning to a mean that we get in severe recessions of 10-1, that puts gold at 2850 conservatively. And I like to say, even if you keep the GSR at 80, the gold to silver ratio, there's still $36 silver, which is pretty strong against 24 today, right? I mean, that would be a 50% increase.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget that in 2011, gold got down to a 4-to-1 ratio against the Dow.
Okay, that was only 12 years ago.
Yeah, and of course these things are going to happen again. Of course they're going to happen again. You know, we get lulled to sleep that they're not going to happen. Of course they are.
Well, yeah, and you can see that blue line as it just goes back and forth, like is that what you're referring to, right? I mean, it's cyclical, it ebbs and flows just like any pattern in nature.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is what you referred to earlier about well, this is the relationship of the dollar. Here it is, just the money supply, but you can see that these big leaps occur over it, and they're usually in cycles of, you know, when the commodity bull run happens. So you can see this is kind of a new chart. I've never seen this before.
That's a great chart. I haven't been able to find a chart like that that was more up to date, because if you go back before 1980, that chart, that the purple line, or I guess the indigo line, is bang on the US money supply, right? They're in lockstep up until 1980, or rather 1970. And then you see the undervaluations through 2000. You see that it got ahead of itself. Now they don't report the M2 anymore, though, do they?
Not really. It's you'll see it kind of drop off there.
Yeah, because I would think that if they were still reporting the M2, then by the time that it would be much, much higher than that, actually, than where we are today. But even still, it does show you that gold is well undervalued against it, and it has a long way to go. I think the M2 is in, I don't know if this is I would use probably something else than M2. We have to find an alternative, because you just, like, maybe debt to US, maybe debt to gold.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, if you do debt to gold, you'll really enjoy the number on the fundamental value of gold.
Is that what's next? Is that your next chart?
No, I wish.
Oh, okay. All right.
I have one for that, but it's we're running out of time in order to serve, you know, our subscribers have loved these broadcasts. And I think next week we may even try another host, but I think, no, the chemistry's good here. We should keep this running. What are some final thoughts, or let's predict some things for next week? This is being taped on a Friday, but we'll probably roll it out on a Monday. So what do you got, Jerry, as a prediction? Not price predictions, but just anything.
Yeah, I think as the trends continue with people removing, I'm just looking at the numbers flowing out of the big banks in the States, JP Morgan, Bank of America, flowing out. We're seeing the depositors are leaving in droves. So I've been following that, but the article that came out of Fortune today, the headline reads, JP Morgan could launch a blockchain-based deposit token relatively quickly with regulator approval. So that sounds like, to me, I don't know what exactly that would be, but it sounds like, sir, you don't need, or ma'am, you don't need real deposits. You got an NFT token of your deposit here in the bank, so don't worry about it. I don't know where this is going, but this is definitely a panic move. It looks like a panic move from JP Morgan for him to want to launch a blockchain-based deposit token. I mean, get real. You got to get real at this time and get real money in your portfolio, physical gold and silver, and the amount of money flowing out of big banks and financial instruments, derivatives, and funneling into gold and silver. The gains are going to be thousands for silver, tens of thousands for gold. And we're going to be seeing that probably within the next 10 years.
Good prediction. Jeremy, what's something to watch for?
Well, I like that you said the next 10 years, Jerry, because that's really what I've been thinking about over the last week, is just thinking longer term, thinking about where we're going to be in 10 years. You know, everyone's so stuck in thinking about the current situation with inflation and interest rates that they're not thinking about, well, where's the dollar going to be? Where's everything going to be in 10 years? Exactly. And the debts are going to have to be paid somehow. Someone's going to get defaulted on. Someone's going to get 50 cents on the dollar, right? So you've got to protect your wealth. And I think, as far as our conversation today is, it's really been about sovereignty, and that owning some actual physical assets, whether it's at home personally or in a IRA or registered account in Canada, that it is yours and you're maintaining your sovereignty and you're keeping it outside the system while all of these things play out over the next year, next 5 years, next decade. And I think that, as far as the metals are concerned, I think we're going to be able to buy a lot more with our metals in 5 to 10 years than we are today. So I'm not selling, that's for sure. I'm not selling yet.
I'm going to add one thing to watch for. I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see our domestic policy become a little more. We're going to see a clamping down on things like air travel. I'm starting to notice just some symptoms on that. And I think it's going to be related to energy shortages. I think just like we saw in some lines at the pump and things like that. So
yeah, and of course they'll be blamed on our energy consumption, right? It'll all come back to us to blame, right? That we're using too much energy.
Your car's too big. It has nothing to do with, the military or any other big users of energy. It would be.
Yeah, and if they eventually have rolling blackouts, people who have electric cars, it's how are they going to feel? It's one of those things that keep boomeranging back on us, right? People took low interest rate mortgages, and then now they've raised the rates, and now they're dealing with it, and they're saying, why? But you guys said it was okay, and you guys, at least in Canada, they said, oh no, we're not going to raise rates for a long time, and then they turned around and did it. Right. And it's like, how many times is it going to be, fool me once, shame on you, and fool me twice, shame on me? Like, it's just constantly hitting people to say, well, I need to stop listening to them. I need to start listening to myself. And it's all about educating as to what real money is versus a currency. And currencies are just units of exchange, and money is a store of value. So even this slide says money supply. Well, that's actually currency supply, isn't it?
It's true. Yeah.
It's not money. So this is an uphill battle, but it's a winning battle for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Subscribers, in Canada, especially Toronto, Guildhall Wealth are specialists in gold and silver bullion and self-directed IRAs. Jeremy and Jerry, thank you for joining the Pickaxe on Ape TV, and we'll be live next week. You guys hang on with me off air, and we're saying goodbye for this week, and see you soon.
A giant thank you, our proud sponsor, Guildhall Wealth Management. The Chads that work there have power levels way over 9,000 and provide amazing services. So hurry up and go to guildhallwealth.com. You shan't be disappointed. Now, our beautiful Patreon supporters. GG Bullion and hashtag #DrainTheMint is stupid are our life-giving community member apes. They support us, and we're truly grateful to you as well. If you support us on Patreon, you too will also have your name shouted out here by me or the other twisted creations of SDC. Until next time, big butts, coconuts, apple pies, and fart machines.